Longtime televangelist and conservative host of the 700 Club, Pat Robertson, surprised just about everyone yesterday when he sounded off on the state of policing in America. After reporting on the killing of Daunte Wright, he did a demonstration on set showing the difference between a gun and a taser. He then said this.
I am pro-police, folks. I think we need the police. We need their servants, and they do a good job. But if they don't stop this onslaught, they cannot do this. You know, the police in Virginia picked up a lieutenant in the Army and began to give him trouble. And our state police are highly trained. But why they don't stop this? And this thing is going on in Minnesota, but the Derek Chauvin, I mean, they ought to put him under the jail. He has caused so much trouble by kneeling on the death of George Floyd. It's just, I mean, on his neck. It's just terrible what's happening. And the police, why don't they open their eyes to what the public relations are? They've got to stop this stuff.
Maybe they need more training. Consistent training. I don't mean training.
The problem is
things, but
you've got to pay them more. We don't have the finest in the police department. They're low-paid people, Terry. They don't get adequate. It's not a question of training. It's a question of hiring a more superior workforce, and we aren't doing it. But we need police. We need them, and we need to honor them, and I'm all for it. But at the same time, we cannot have a bunch of clowns running around who are underpaid and who really are not the best and brightest. We've got to have the best in there.
Keisha, for people who don't appreciate how influential Pat Robertson is, the 700 Club has been an institution across this country for many, many, many years. And millions of people listen to the word of Pat Robertson talking about police there. He was referencing the stop of Lieutenant Nazario in Virginia as well. That was for what they thought was not displaying a tag. He did have the tag, and it escalated to the point where he was sprayed and tased. And of course, Daunte Wright was stopped because he had expired tabs on his car, and that ended in his death, of course. So I guess the question here is of escalation. Why expired tags are leading to the death of young men in this country?
Well, ultimately, here's where we have to confront a problem that we've been avoiding for a long time, and that is the problem of anti-Black racism, which I'll identify in this moment. And this is partly why Black Lives Matter as a movement has certainly, over the last couple of years, been trying to get Americans to understand that there is no value when it comes to Black people's lives, when it comes to people of color in general. When police officers have encounters with folks who look like me, unfortunately, as we saw play out in the case of Daunte Wright, there is no sympathy, there is no understanding, there is just this person encountering an individual and being quite belligerent, not even attempting to de-escalate. And again, an individual doing this who has 26 years of experience. Kim Potter is the only evidence you need that so-called training is simply not going to cut it. It's not effective, and it's about time that we accept the reality that you can train and train and train all day. But at the end of the day, if someone is going to encounter someone who looks like me and come into the situation without value in my life, guess what? The results will be the same.
Yeah.
Jon Meacham, for younger viewers who may not understand the import of Pat Robertson's statement, you and I as Southerners know the cultural impact that he had across the South and the nation. My grandmother constantly had the 700 Club on in her home in Pensacola. It was a big part of Southern culture. In 1988, Pat Robertson ran for president of the United States. He beat George H.W. Bush in Iowa, and I believe Bob Dole as well. And the Republican Party, as it looked throughout the 90s and beyond, was shaped in part by Pat Robertson, in part by Pat Buchanan. Explain to our viewers that may not have grown up with the 700 Club playing in the background of relatives and friends' home, just how impactful that statement is coming from a conservative cultural icon like Pat Robertson.
Yeah, I would say for people who are seeing this and sort of being dismissive about Robertson because of his long history of remarks and activism, go grab a Bible and Google the parable of the prodigal son. If somebody does something right, you welcome it. And you welcome him. Robertson was, in many ways, kind of the mainstream, the kind of official embodiment of the rise of the religious right, which really began. I think it began with the school prayer decision in 1962. It was slow in developing. A lot of white evangelicals stayed out of politics in the mid-1960s because they were uncomfortable with civil rights, which was a space that was clearly associated with the black church. Then, Jerry Falwell was having breakfast in Lynchburg, Virginia on January 23rd, 1973, opens the Lynchburg newspaper, and there were two stories. One was that Lyndon Johnson had died the day before, and the other was that Harry Blackmun, in an opinion for the court, had rendered a decision in Roe versus Wade. And Falwell couldn't eat his breakfast and felt this compulsion to get into the public arena. It intersected with the 1976 bicentennial, this kind of patriotism surge, with this religious conservative surge. By 1980, obviously, it's a key part of the Republican base. And the triumph of Ronald Reagan over Gerald Ford and George H.W. Bush in that era was a clear signal. Then, as you say, 8 years later, Pat Robertson, instead of just having this influence on it, decided he wanted to run himself and won a big Michigan straw poll. It puzzled George H.W. Bush. He thought ministers had a role but shouldn't be running. He was puzzled that they were running for office. What I think this tells us is that people who use the evidence of their eyes and are able to put aside a pre-existing prism and see things for what they are, and what Robertson seems in this moment, and Robertson's also fully capable of saying something else today, so the prodigal son has a very short effectiveness life, is that there is the capacity for us to use, in religious terms, a God-given intelligence. And to say what, if you see it, say it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.